There's a major problem affecting countries around the world, and this problem is gender inequality in education. Almost a quarter of women aged 15–24 today have never completed primary school, and that's 116 million women. That's a huge number indeed. There are three specific countries in the world which have over 1 million girls not in school. They are Pakistan, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. According to statistics, an estimated 31 million girls of primary school age and 32 million girls of lower secondary school age were out of school in 2013, and that was 4 years ago, while 17 million girls are expected to never even enter school at all. Sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest proportion of countries with gender parity. South and West Asia have the widest gender gap in its out-of-school population. In fact, 80% of its out-of-school girls are likely to ever start school compared to 16% of its out-of-school boys. The full participation report marks the 20th anniversary of the UN Fourth World Conference of Women in Beijing, where leaders from 189 nations gathered to fight for global gender equality and protect women's rights as human rights. The significant progress which has been made in the past 20 years is undeniable, and it can be seen in the women's education as well. Girls now enroll in primary school at nearly the same rate worldwide as boys. But despite progress in recent years, girls continue to suffer severe disadvantage and exclusion in education systems throughout their lives. The barriers for the girls to education are different and huge. They range from supply-side constraints, which mostly connected with school fees, to negative social norms. The cultural norms that are most difficult to overcome are favoring boys' education. Some of the other barriers include inadequate sanitation facilities in schools, such as a lack of private and separate toilets, and negative classroom environments where girls may face violence, exploitation, or corporal punishment. Additionally, schools often lack sufficient members of female teachers, and this is really disappointing. Increasingly, adolescent girls also face economic and social demands that further disrupt their education, spanning from household obligations and child labor to child marriage, gender-based violence, and female genital cutting. Inadequate or discriminatory legislation and policies often inhibit girls' equal access to quality education. In countries such as Afghanistan and Pakistan, formal or written threats to close girls' schools or rent classes for girls have fueled gender-motivated attacks on schools. When compounded by factors such as poverty, disability, and location, such barriers can become nearly insurmountable for young girls. But giving girls education is immensely important, and everybody should understand why. So, we'd like to highlight the reason. Providing girls with an education helps break the cycle of poverty. Educated women are less likely to marry early against their will. In fact, they are likely to give birth to healthy babies and are less likely to die in childbirth. Furthermore, they are more likely to send their children to school, thus improving future generations. Education becomes a passport for women to enter the labor force. For instance, some countries lose more than $1 billion a year by failing to educate girls to the same level as boys. Education can boost women's confidence and perception of their freedom. Education ultimately influences women's choice of family size. In Pakistan, while only 30% of women with no education believe they can have a say over the number of their children, the share increases to 63% among women with lower secondary education. So now, let's have a look at the major organizations that try to stop this human rights violation. They are UNESCO and UNICEF. UNICEF is working towards achieving gender equality in various directions. It also supports life skills-based education and female role models in education. Child-friendly schools promote gender equality in the classroom by providing an overall gender-sensitive environment that is conducive to learning at all levels. Within UNICEF, there is the United Nations Girls' Education Initiative, which aims at championing the rights of girls and help countries achieve gender equality in education. This education is focusing its efforts on several key strategic priorities. First of all, it is the reduction of gender-based violence in schools. Secondly, it is improved learning results for girls. And finally, an increased number of girls transitioning to secondary school and accessing post-primary opportunities. Gender equality is also a global priority for UNESCO and is linked to its efforts to promote the right to education, which aims at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education, promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. In particular, UNESCO helps countries in mainstreaming gender in educational laws, policies, plans, and teacher training. It also monitors normative instruments related to gender equalities and ultimately supports the development of curricula and textbooks free from stereotypes and discrimination. Well, to sum up, we'd like to stress that investment in girls' and women's education must be an international and national priority, so as to abolish this historical gender gap in formal knowledge and skills acquisition. Equality exists when women and men have access to quality education, resources, and productive work in all spheres of life, and when they are able to share power and knowledge on this basis. Governments everywhere must do far more for girls' right to education, to bolster girls' capacities, and to create conditions for the fulfillment of their aspirations, which requires stronger legalization and policies of protection and inclusion. Thank you for your attention.